Nein, das ist eine große Liebe.
Ja,
Das
eben.
ist, und für Feier ist es super, dass sie so junge Freunde hat.
Ja, ja.
Das ist toll. Überhaupt ist es toll. Ich glaube, das muss man schaffen, dass man, wenn man älter wird, Freunde hat, die nicht die eigenen Kinder sind, selbst wenn sie sich in ihrer Rahmen anbieten.
Ja, und Silbertasse. Ja, das ist doch schon gut. Ja, jetzt fährst du hin. Ja, schöne Grüße.
Ja, das ist so. Und morgen auf dem Remake-Festival. Läuft noch was, bei dem ich mitgearbeitet habe, von Studio Tatjana. Das ist so eine Veranstaltung.
Ich habe das jetzt schon gestartet, also ich habe das jetzt erstmal nur im Bild quasi gestartet, weil
Film gemacht, der da morgen.
genau, aber das sollte stehen, das ist quasi
Und Plakate? Stimmt, Plakate hast du.
ja, genau, aber live.
Ja.
Wir haben deutsche und englische Plakate. Wir haben auch noch mehr.
Ja, sehr schön. Also haben wir auch schon.
Ja, aber live, das ist genau, weil die gibt noch keine, deswegen. Genau.
Ja.
Na klar kenne ich dich noch.
Nein.
Ich habe sogar einen Kalender immer noch von dir eine, so eine,
Haben wir einen Termin?
nee, weißt du, so eine Markierung in Algras.
Ja.
Zum Trainer, hier für den Fall, Family Business und so.
Genau.
Ist immer noch da.
Ja, gut, nicht wegmachen.
Runter. Nett, voll.
Ich freue mich auch.
Wir würden jetzt aufmachen, ne? Ich dachte schon, es ist noch ein bisschen schütter.
Ja, gut.
Ja,
Kunsthochschule für Medien. Ich freue mich sehr, dass Sie da sind. Mein Name ist Alejandro Bachmann. Ich bin Professor für Filmgeschichte und Filmtheorie hier an der Institution und freue mich sehr, Sie begrüßen zu dürfen zum ersten Heimspielabend des diesjährigen Semesters. Die Heimspielabend ist eine Reihe, die hier regelmäßig im Semester stattfinden und an denen Arbeiten von Studierenden bzw. ehemals Studierenden der KHM hier gezeigt und besprochen werden. Am heutigen Abend freuen wir uns sehr, Erzählungen eines Kinogehers Werner Dütsch zeigen zu können von Christiane Büchner, die ich herzlich begrüßen möchte. Herzlich willkommen. Willst du was sagen, Christiane?
Danke, dass ihr alle hier seid. Ich freue mich sehr, hinterher was sagen zu können.
Ja. Genau, wir werden danach noch ins Gespräch gehen und ich werde jetzt auch ins Englische wechseln. Das hat folgenden Grund. Heute ist am 3. Dezember ist der sogenannte Infotag an der Kunsthochschule für Medien. Das ist die Möglichkeit für Studierende aus Deutschland und der ganzen Welt über Zoom Konferenzen mit den einzelnen Fächergruppen einen Einblick in die Lehre hier zu bekommen, Fragen zu stellen und so weiter. Und diese Studierenden haben auch die Möglichkeit bekommen, über einen Zugangscode diesen Film einerseits zu sehen mit englischen Untertiteln und auch anschließend das Gespräch mitzuverfolgen. Das wird aufgezeichnet über diese kleinen Kameras, die Sie hier überall sehen. And so this is why I switched to English and give a very short warm welcome to our audiences online. As I have just said in German, we are very happy to have you here and we are going to show a film that is very closely connected to the Kunsthochschule für Medien. It is called Reminiscence of a Moviegoer. Werner Dütsch, and it deals with the film editor, meaning he worked in the editorial department of the WDR, the Cologne television station, for many years, and he also was a professor here at KHM between 1992 and 2012, and was really quite influential, I think one can say, for the students here, but also for filmmaking in Germany and actually the world in general. And so we will be very happy to speak about your film and your experience also studying here while Werner was here and things like that. And so without further ado, thank you for your attention and please enjoy the film. Vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit. Danke. So thank you, Christiane, for the film. We will begin with a discussion to talk a bit about this project, and then you are also kindly invited to pose questions also in German if this is more comfortable to you. I'm sure we'll find a way to communicate. It's not so easy actually to talk about this film because there has been so much talking and it has been about cinema, and there are so many things I think that kind of trigger at least my interest as someone who also teaches film history in delving in deeper into all of these questions that have been raised. But maybe we can stick a bit to basically your work in this film and with this film and with Werner Dütsch. There is one thing that he says that I like very much, because I think I agree. He says that all the good documentary filmmakers always make visible their own involvement and not only show images, but show images and how they are produced, which is very nice because your film starts like this as well. The first drawing we see is the constellation of you and Werner Dütsch sitting there. And I think this changes how I look at everything that comes afterwards, because it gives me an idea of the situation that was created to make this film. And I think this makes a huge difference. But then again, there's also a lot being left out that I don't know. And one thing is surely what your specific relationship to Werner Dütsch was, and how it happened that you met in, I guess, his living room. At least it feels like it, to shoot this interview. So maybe you can give us a bit of a context how it came to this actual conversation that you had, and how you would describe your relationship at that point.
Okay, yeah, I met him here as a teacher. He was not a professor, but that has to do with his history. But he taught film history here, and he also was in contact with students over their projects. So he helped making projects. And there was a certain moment when I had a huge project and I was filming and filming and filming and filming, and I sent him something, and he said, "That's interesting. Maybe we get into business." And I thought, wow, film, yeah, okay, television, what shall I do? Do I need the framing for television? And he said, you don't need that. You don't need anything of that. Nobody knows these people here. Just don't do that. And so I felt, on one hand, he was a teacher, so I saw Lubitsch here with him. And he loved Lubitsch, and this is also a tribute to this love. Then he helped me to make a film, and then he freed me from everything I thought I have to fulfill. And that's a method I found in this interview. Many years later, we just were friends. And there was this exhibition with films by Günter Straschek in the museum, in the Ludwig Museum, and there was a talk, and his partner Paya said, "Did anyone tape this? Yeah, record it?" And I said, "No, I don't think so. I haven't seen anything, any device or so." And she said, everybody says we should do an interview with Werner Dütsch, and nobody does it. And I said, okay, I will do it. That's how it started. So I came there as a friend. I came there with 2 other friends who had been my students here and who studied here at this school. So there was a lot of interest coming to Ghent, to this table. But we had to wait because he was very ill before that. So when we arrived, I thought, wow, this is never going to happen. Yeah, he was very weak. His voice was very fragile. And then he said, I mean, I have no images because it was just a sound recording at that moment. And he said, are my hands in the frame? And he took over. So it's our film, really. Yeah. That's how it started.
And what would you say, and how far did you prepare? Because I think we get an idea of this in the interview. There's really a lot that he has done over the years, and he has been in different contexts. And so I'm wondering, like, how much research was necessary, or was this more or less of an automatic process, and you gave some triggering questions and then it went as it went?
No. First of all, I got this production list, so I could print that out, and that was really helpful. And I knew his book. And of course, we were friends, so I had heard some of these stories, but never in this combination. I mean, I really wanted to go with him through his life, or he wanted to do that. And the book he wrote about his growing up inside cinema, and the sound of this book is also the sound of this film. So he was really generous in telling me all these stories. But of course, I prepared. And when I started to prepare, I did this here in the bibliothèque, in the library, because there are a lot of traces of him in this library. I realized that this was a big task, and that my promise that I gave so quickly had quite an aftermath. Yeah. Then Dietrich Leder, who was also a professor here, and who knows especially television history up and down, he really helped me a lot to structure this this interview. And the rest was just on site. So if I didn't know anything, something, then he would just explain it to me. And I really like this generosity. He was not. I mean, he could, but in this stage of life and with me as a friend, he was not. He didn't want to talk me down. Yeah, he wanted to explain something. He wanted to tell his story, and it's a story of education. It's a story that starts with self-education inside cinema, and as I knew him, this never changed. He was very open and he was very curious all the time, and he had den Vorrat. Also, yeah, he had all the resources from all kinds of films, from all times, to back it up. Yeah, and that was always interesting. I know this. He did that with me, but he did it also with other students. He would tell you about films, but mostly he would come by with a DVD and just give it to you, and then you knew the contact to something else.
I think that he is I would say very, for lack of better words, and also because I hardly met him. I met him very shortly, twice. But from the film, I think, and also from his work that I know a little bit, I get the impression that he was a teacher, but he was a special kind of teacher. And to me, this is very, it can be felt in the film, the way he talks also to you, the way he tells you about his experiences in cinema, his memories, and also his theories, because he has theories as well. It doesn't have so much this gesture of, I am telling you and you may listen and understand. And I think this adds up very much in the end, when he is trying not to come into this position of, now that I am an old man who has done all of these great things, I look back on the past and say it has been good and now everything is terrible. And I think this is a very not surprising and at the same time a big relief to hear that at the end.
Yeah, I like that too. He was very realistic in this way, and also he still gained something from it. So he had a huge collection of DVDs, films that were very important for him, and as he said in the film, he and Paya were watching films every evening. And they were selecting these films together, but as I learned, he had 5 propositions and she could choose one of them. And they saw films again and again, certain films, and would discuss them. So she was also, or she is, also deeply into film. This was important for him, and he realized, he told me about nitrate film and how he watched nitrate film and what a sensation that was for him. And I thought, I will never see this, yeah? But at the same time, he loved DVDs because he could watch them over and over again, and he was open to both sensations. So, and I think that's a method. I was interested in the method, Werner Dütsch. I was interested as a friend, but I was also interested in this combination of knowledge and openness and a kind of adventurousness also. You send somebody to Nepal who thinks he should read Eisenstein to make a 4-hour-long film. And there is more in this footage when he tries to convince the WDR that the editing doesn't take that long if you compare it to the editing of a 45-minute thing, yeah? So 4 hours. So he was, he was interested, and if there was something appealing, then he would just trust also, and he would give you money also. There are people here who know that.
I read in the text accompanying the film that there, if I'm not mistaken, there were 8 hours of material that you shot. We approximately see 90 minutes of it, a little bit less maybe. And maybe you can describe a little bit how it came to this next step, because if I understand correctly, the original intention was not right away to make a film, but more to have this conversation as a document. And then it changed into a film project. And can you say something about how this happened?
At first, it was just an interview. But when I watched it, at first I couldn't watch it because Werner Dütsch died 3 months after this interview. He died. And then I thought that it was me because I forced him to tell all his life, and then he thought it's over. Yeah. But Paya said this was not the case, so okay. So I couldn't watch it for a while, and then I realized that I have to do something with it. But I didn't want to make just a film. I wanted to use this method for a project that uses this method with other people, with other knowledge. Yeah. So just I imagined this table where we sat, and to invite other guests to this table, and to find a way to make this comfortable, easy, accessible, and interesting for people to say, maybe older people who would say, oh, I remember this differently, and very young people would say, why are there no women? Yeah. So, and that you have a technological way to combine this. And this is still what I'm dreaming of. I mean, I want an it's an oral history project that is not finished in 90 minutes, but that is growing, that is reacting to this very, I think, contemporary way of approaching film production, film history, content that can be transformed into film, reality that can be addressed through film as a way of communication. Yeah.
Maybe let's come back to that in a couple of minutes. This kind of project that you are describing, this idea that maybe this film is a starting point for a dialogue and not kind of a closed lid to the history of Werner Dütsch or something like this.
One thing. He told me when I arrived with all the equipment and everything, he said, no heroic story, no love stories. And I stick to that.
It's interesting because I was wondering, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I was wondering at one point about the love story just because he speaks so passionately about cinema and being in cinemas, and I often ask myself, but whom did you share this with, this passion? Because he speaks about friends and people who worked with him at WDR and things like that, but he, for example, doesn't talk about going with his partner to the cinema, and I was wondering actually if this had been a topic in your discussion, because from all, let's say, cinephiles of that, you know, cinephiles like him, they are often very much entangled in relationships that also are entangled with cinema. So they are hard to pull apart. So I was wondering actually if this was a topic, but he specifically said he didn't want to talk about it.
There were different relationships and they were differently entangled and we didn't address them. But there was one point when he said, when we took our partners, girlfriends, to the cinema and watched Godard or a Western, we would tell them, please shut up. And I didn't put it in the film, but somebody can take it into the project. I'm happy to share.
Maybe coming back first, before we go into this other question of the project that you have in mind, let's go back to those 90 minutes. So we have this conversation, which is one part and that we talked about a little bit. And then a second important element of the film are the animation sequences that I personally like very much. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit how you, first of all, decided to have animation sequences at all, because another option would be to have the sequences of the films that are represented in the animation, but actually the films themselves on the one hand. And then maybe we can also speak a little bit about their concrete form, because I think they are very interesting in a number of aspects.
Well, I very much share the idea of a document with Werner. And I saw these 8 hours as a document, or I see it. And I didn't want to leave this present of the creation of the document by escaping through time in different films, because that's very powerful. Yeah, if you see a film from 33, you feel that it's 33. I mean, he might not have felt it when he was a little boy, but we do. So I didn't want to have the films represented as themselves, but as a reference that came from either from the interview or from my research or from my knowledge of his favorite films and favorite directors. But for myself, it was also a way of, you asked me how I prepared. I mean, most of it I prepared afterwards, because then I followed certain hints he gave and I watched all these films. And I'm not a big fan of Westerns, but I started to understand. And for example, when he says, well, do you want to walk like Cooper or like Mitchum? I compared. So I took 2 films, Man with a Gun and High Noon. I mean, he clearly chose Cooper over Mitchum, I think. But what I found when I worked with the film and I rotoscoped very reluctantly the movements, and I put it just on top of each other, I realized how they were choreographed, the choreography inside, and how they were I mean, they really wanted to come together. I just put it on top of each other, and this happened. Yeah, and I was so fascinated. So I understood something about film. Or Fort Apache, for example. I listened to this German trailer, and the German trailer is directly the opposite of the film. I mean, it's a heroic. It depicts a heroic film, but it's an anti-war film. It's a defeat, a total defeat of warfare. So there are a lot of things that you can, in the project, that could be continued, but for now it's okay, I think. So it was my kind of research. It's my way of doing research. Yeah.
Yes, but there's also a specific form to these animations. On the one hand, you use the sound of the original films, and we see your images, your interpretations of the images. And also a lot of the images articulate a process. So I don't feel I'm watching finished animation and then it moves, so to say. I'm actually seeing you making the animation when I watch them. Can you say something about this? Is this just your style, or?
No, it's not a style. It's a kind of artistic economy, I think. I never wanted to make real animation. It's more like sketching. I'm doing a lot of graphic recordings, so I'm used to draw fast and draw with the flow of thoughts, and I like this very much, this process, maybe even more than filmmaking. And I try to use this ability or this training for these animations too. And it was it also was important to get an idea of the film somehow, but don't cross the line to over-interpretation. So films like, for example,
Der gewöhnliche Faschismus.
Der gewöhnliche Faschismus, yeah. In English, I don't know it right now. Ordinary fascism, yeah. It was clear that I cannot just rotoscope. You would not understand the idea. And the idea of this part is very heavy. And I wanted to find an abstract form that falls together with this voiceover by Rom. In other films, I wanted it to be more playful, and I wanted it to be different every time. I didn't want it as a steady commentary, but more like an Adventskalender, yeah? So it's something where you can open a door and, and you really don't know what is going to happen. So that it's, not because I find Werner boring, but it's just for myself. I thought I don't like it when animation is just a way of creating footage. Yeah.
I think what I really like about them is that they articulate a strong subjectivity, and thus your subjectivity basically in interpreting these films, and that connects, I think, to something that he's speaking about in the comparison between the way he grew up with cinema and the way we deal with cinema now. Now there is this constant presence, so it would be very easy to have these clips in the film. But what you did, for me, articulates more this idea of they are memories, they are experiences that also change within me and that are not the exact reproduction of what I have seen. And this is something I like very much because it also seems to be important to him.
Yes, I like to hear that very much.
Maybe to slowly come back to this project that you were talking about, and then also to open the questions to the audience. You did answer part of what I wanted to ask by saying that you were interested in his method. And you also articulated with the example of the absence of women in that film, that from perspective in the present, we might look at the way he talks about film history, critically and ask, what about non-Western, non-white, non-male perspectives on film history? And this is just a footnote. I found it interesting, and I only realized it now when seeing it again, that when he brings out his books, 3 of the 5 books were written by women, which I find super interesting, that there is obviously a strong presence in his cinephilia of women. But when he talks about films, it hardly is the case. One film, I think, is by a female filmmaker. But my question would be a little bit, apart from this interest in the method, what do you see as, for lack of a better word, the value or the potential of him speaking about cinema for today, for the present?
It's a way to look back without being forced to look back. It's a way to understand, because he goes so far back to the very first films that were his most beloved films, were it was the very early cinema, and the possibility with him, through him as a protagonist, we can open up the whole space of cinema and television and maybe other visual arts as well, and ask questions to this time, critical questions, of course. We can open a discussion and use his method to find new ways of making films or compositions, or contribute to this audiovisual world. And our world is so audiovisual, more than his was. Yeah, I mean, he went to cinema like as much as possible, because the outside world was rather trist back then. But we have to close our eyes to get away from audiovisual content. And so this question, what can we do to make something that will be seen and which has a value, I think can be addressed very well through his values. And his values are not just moral values. They are not at all moral values. They are Leidenschaften. What is Leidenschaft? Passions, yeah.
Yes, and lived experiences, right? I think. And
experiences and a very good, precise memory. There are some mistakes in this film. I mean, this F58 was F59 or 57 or something by Patalas, what he wrote. The film that he said was never broadcasted was broadcasted, but not in the WDR. So there are some things he didn't memorize, but a lot of things he memorized, and I looked it up very precisely. So that's amazing, and this was part of his ability to draw lines between aesthetic things that are in time very far apart. And I think this is very valuable, to have a protagonist, a figure who can orchestrate that or can just be the center of it. And you can be critical with him, he would not mind. I think he was a bit afraid when I left with all this material. And I mean, when he said, yeah, you can film like hours and hours, and we filmed 8 hours, so he was like, and then he thought, oh God, what is she going to do with that? Maybe we should talk to other people from the Filmredaktion. And so I said, no, nope, I don't want that. So maybe he wouldn't be so happy with this film, because he had also a shy side. So he didn't really want to be in the center of something, but to be in the center of a critical debate, he would have loved to. And that's why it's the next step. Yeah. So the film is supposed to be the interface, and from this interface there will be hopefully interactions with contributions from students, from colleagues, from whoever wants to contribute something non-heroic.
And maybe can you just quickly, I know that this is also in process, but we have talked about, can you maybe quickly outline how you imagine this to happen, this kind of dialogue? What, because you have a quite concrete plan for this.
Yes, I want to trigger or invite interested people to use the interview, all parts of the interview. So I will socialize it, what I want are films, linear films that can be attached to the linearity of this film, to the chronology. That can be addressed interactively on the internet. And what I really wish for, and I'm very, this is why it's very trembling for me now to show the film here, because I'm very, very grateful for the support from the school here in making this film and in considering to help me with this project also, because Werner Dütsch was a teacher here. This film is also part of his legacy and his teaching legacy, not a private legacy. And he left a lot of traces here that can be bind together in this project and be a contemporary thing. That's the best a protagonist can hope for, I think.
So maybe to just also specify this a little bit, for example, so we have talked about one option could be we have a seminar here at KHM in which we would, for example, show the film, and from there we could watch the films that he speaks about and discuss them in the course. And then in the second semester, for example, we could find people who would be interested in basically making their own small films which are in dialogue or in dialogue with or as an answer to his films, as one possible answer. And then what you imagine would be a kind of interactive site where the film is at the center, but other new films develop side by side to it.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And the third part would be that it's very easy to find certain films. All the Westerns you can watch on internet or DVD. But the television production is very scarce. It's difficult to get there. It's very expensive. It's complicated. It's maybe even gone. And I know that we have this here at the school. And it's possible to get everything together. So the educational part, the film part, the interesting diversity of films he supported, plus the archive of this school. As students he supported, as media he left here. Yeah, that would be cool. And that would be also something to that is good to preserve as a living thing.
Yeah, I mean, I told you before the conversation that this is a project to make his legacy, and I like that you say it's not a private legacy, but his teaching legacy visible here. Interestingly enough, because I knew we would have this conversation, so Werner Dütsch was kind of in the back of my head, and I realized that just in the last 2 weeks in seminars, I had shown 2 films in which Werner Dütsch was involved. So it's actually very true to say that on many levels he is present here through making films possible, such as Der Panwitzblick, which is a very, very important and quite radical film about disability that was made in the beginning of the 90s, or Der VW-Komplex by Hartmut Bitomski, which we just saw a couple of days ago. Are there questions, remarks? questions.
We can have a cigarette outside as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, asked a good question, so it's difficult to ask others.
So I feel kind of good and bad at the same time.
Actually, I don't have a question, but I would maybe start the dialogue you intend to have. I was working inside of das kleine Fernsehspiel as a commissioning editor, and I knew him very well. And I feel myself as a different generation. Also, I'm old now too. I started at the end of the 70s to work there, and the head of our department was Eckhard Stein, who is more or less a similar figure of people dedicated to the student movement in the 60s. They grew up during the war and were fascinating in cinema. And I had a lot of struggles with Eckhard Stein. Also, it was very nice for me and our younger colleagues, I think also inside of WDR, to use the space these people opened up for creative work. At the same time, I was a bit critical, or I felt that there was a kind of paradox. They were triggered and fascinated by the fascination and the passion of cinema, but they, in many ways, they did not manage, and also the generation of filmmakers like Kluge, he mentioned him one, or Godard, to create films who have this emotional and sensual fascination they got fixed on in their youth, but they ended up to do rather abstract films, from my point of view, which had no emotional impact or very little emotional impact. And this was for me a kind of paradox. And through the pressure in the 70s, it was mainly a political pressure. In the 80s, it was the pressure of the commercial TV stations. In a way, they also hardened. I mean, they still were open for new ideas, that's true, but they had to defend and legitimize all the time what they were doing. So sometimes, in some way, they also hardened in a way, innerly, from my point of view. And I think it's very interesting to get this generation in this film, for me, but I think it's also very important, based on a film like this, to talk about what documentary films could be today, and I think they might be quite different. And also, maybe last thing I want to say, of course, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even in the 80s, especially in Germany, there was a big fear that films are too emotional because of the propaganda in the Nazi era. So everything should be very rational, yeah? And these people were very influenced by the Frankfurt Philosophical School, Adorno especially, and I think now we are really ahead of this, from my point of view. And you also need to be critical about it. He's not really, he's an example in his time, but we cannot take what he commissioned and what he did and the films he showed and just repeat it again. There's no sense in it. But to have a dialogue upon it, I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I understand what you want to say, or what you said, but to give a really an example. When I made my film Perestroika, which is about, I mean, people thought that I want to write a dissertation, or film a dissertation about communal flats in post-Soviet Russia. And when he heard about it, he gave me a film, Ninochka, by Lubitsch. So I think he had the emotional side also on his side. He was very much influenced by very emotional cinema. And if you look at this list with 1,200 titles, there is not only the rational. That's really not true. When we look at it, I mean, he did a lot of Pitomsky, not so much Farocki, but he was open for the emotional side also, and because of his love for this very early cinema and the American cinema from the 50s, I think it would be possible to discuss that too through him. And I don't feel that he hardened, really. He was fed up with his job in the end. Yeah, that's true. So they were singing a farewell in this farewell party. But yeah, you are very welcome to contribute to this project. And it shouldn't be a big production issue. It could be just like, it should be linear, but it shouldn't be a very elaborate production to contribute. That's very important, I think.
Yeah, I think what you, how you described it once was you do want answers in films that have a certain insistence and seriousness in how they are done, so that it doesn't become this kind of, I watch it and 5 minutes later I have my personal answer. It's more like it should create some sort of deeper involvement, right? Which I think is also a good thing, because this keeps the film safe from this kind of culture that we also see online, where everyone has an opinion very quickly. Yes. And I think it's a good idea to create maybe an environment that says there are some rules how you are in dialogue with him. Yeah.
Yeah, and opinion is maybe not the first thing. Mm. Yeah. More comments?
If there aren't any, then I would say maybe we make use of your option to speak with a cigarette outside. So thank you once again, Christiane. It was very nice having you here and watching the film together. And all the best for the film, which will have its cinema premiere. It premiered in Rotterdam this year, was also shown at Cologne Film Festival, and will have its kind of cinema distribution round about March, April next year or something. Good luck for that.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you.